It's an exciting day at So Well, folks. Today we are going to tackle all of the different units to build the Super 60 sampler quilt. I'm super excited. Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. That is right. I am Rob Appell right here at So Well, presented by Stitchin Heaven, and I'm super blessed to see all of you on the other side of the camera. Boy, it is great to have you back. And yes, I am wound up. I'm super 60 excited because that's what we're doing today. We're going to be working on this fantastic Super 60 sampler quilt, and that's exactly what it is. It is a sampler. So if you stick with me through the entire video today, I'm going to walk you through several different shapes or units or blocks or whatever you want to call these. These are common 60-degree triangle pieces and parts, shapes that you've learned before, such as the tumbling blocks or maybe some of these stars. But my wonderful new template set, the Super 60 sampler set, comes with 3 different templates. And let's just start there. We do have a pattern, but let's start with the templates. I know they're hard to see because they're clear. They're beautiful acrylic plastics. So they're named. We have Jerry, which is a 60-degree triangle. Where can you see that best? My goodness, that's terrible. 60-degree triangle with the cutout so that we can make these awesome circles. Now it's actually a half or a semicircle. It's pieced right here so that we don't have a terrible construction, just some easy curves. So there's Jerry and there's Phil, and they work together, and it makes it so much easier to call them by name instead of shape. And then we also have Bobby, and Bobby is used, it's a third of a triangle, and it's used like where you can see right in here where the 3 different exact same pieces come together, unlike where we have our circles and our squares. Now this quilt you see on the wall over here is the quilt that I built originally. Today we are sharing the brand new fabrics from Art Gallery Fabrics and the solids. This is the brand new kit we have for you, all available at Stitchin Heaven. Now we also have a retreat in February, but I'm not sure that it hasn't already sold out, but the link is definitely in the description for you below. If you're interested in joining me for a 5-day sewing retreat where we will do this in person, please consider coming out to Quitman, Texas, and we can sew together. If you missed this one, we'll do another one. Make sure you're subscribed and following along so that we can make sure you get to come and sew with us in person because it's so awesome and important that way. Okay, let's clear out the set a little bit. We'll come back to the templates. I also want to let you know, and partly why we're doing the video now, because of the kits, we also have a pattern you can follow along. Watching today's video will walk you through all the steps that you need. So you do not need to purchase the pattern, but you may still find it handy because there are a lot of different concepts I'm going to share with you today. It is going to be a longer tutorial, so get yourself some popcorn, put on your socks and your jammies, and sit back. It's going to be an amazing tutorial and you're going to love it. And like I said, we're going to walk through all the parts and pieces individually once we get through our supplies. Now on the back of the pattern, or I'll tell you right now in case you don't have the pattern, I'm asking you to get 18 different fabrics. So I have 18 different solids, and that includes the white and the black. And then I have 18 different prints, and like I said, these are from Art Gallery Fabrics. They're kind of micro prints. Most of them are tone on tones. I have a few like you see here where there's a little bit of white on red or a little bit of white on peach. I just want them to kind of read as their colors. What's really important is that you notice I've already put them together in rainbows, kind of going from my fuchsia to my red. And that's important for the coloring order. So I'm going to color order or number from here 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 18. But I also want to point out my colors are not exactly perfect matches everywhere. And some of your shades will be different. Some of your color palette may be different than what I'm utilizing. The pattern works because we've just numbered these in sections so you can see, and I've still got them on here, my label. So I've done P1 for print 1, I have an S1 for solid 1, and I've labeled my stash, and I labeled the pieces, and I cut them, and I kept them in order because you're going to have a chart on the back that tells you how to cut the different 3 pieces, Jerry, Phil, or Bobby, how many you will need of each piece, and the yardage requirements. Now, most of these are going to be 1/4 yard pieces. There's a few different shades that you're going to need about 1/3 of a yard, and the black and the white is 3/4, the black is 1.5 yards, because you can also see in the quilt it's used not only as filler, but it does all of the perimeter bordering work as well, and the binding, and that information, or I should say that yardage, is included for the binding in here on the pattern also. So that's kind of the yardage you may need. I'll even hold it still so you can get a snapshot if you need following along from home. No problems, but I do recommend, and it's going to be easiest if you just do all of your cutting of your pieces first. Then we'll assemble, and then we'll get into the unit. So let's just do that together today as a team. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get some strips cut. Oh, I put this away and I already wanted to show you the next page. So page 1 of your pattern here has some awesome cutting and layout instructions, and you can do these all with 10-inch squares in case you like pre-cuts. But most of what we're doing today is going to be working off of yardages. So I already have some yardages cut just to show you. I want to cut one of each template to show you how to handle the ruler, how to handle the template, all of that kind of stuff. And also I should point out at a 28mm rotary cutter and a small pair of little like applique scissors are going to be great tools today. The 28mm because it's going to curve best around our templates, and the little scissors because we're going to actually cut the curves after we've stitched them together today. Okay, so now let's dive right into this. We're just going to go from small to big. And in the instructions, I've shown you if you start on the fold or if you start over on the selvage so that you can maximize your yield. So that's partly what's going on here. I am cutting from scraps today, so I may be breaking my own rules. We'll see what happens. Now, one of the things I want to point out, like for a bobby template, okay, on the bobby, there's and all three of them actually have a straight line or a center line. So if you're cutting a bobby template, you're going to want to start on your fold, and something like the Martelli mat is a really nice and efficient way to be able to rotate your fabrics in all directions, and that you may find very efficient in cutting for these today. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you how to cut 2 of these. I am right-handed, so I'm going to set this up right now on this fold right here where I can see, and I chose yellow fabric. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the fold line on the template is right on the fold of the fabric. And the first thing I'm pointing out, regardless of if you're cutting on the fold or cutting the full template all at once, with bobby, this piece right here, this little corner, we want to make sure we don't start by cutting this way. I want you to cut all the way through. So for example, what I can do here is I can actually back up to cut all the way through and then put pressure here. Okay, and the reason we did that is I want that straight edge right there for later. That's going to be really important. I can use that. So now I'll go ahead and cut that off because my templates are engineered for easier sewing, so they do have those edges taken off. So you can see I cut on the fold. There's a full bobby. This is what I want to point out with your bobby cutting. This will make for the least amount of waste, okay? So we can either fold or rotate however you want to do with your cutting mat here. Now as I come around, I want to point out first that as we slide this down and find the bottom and this side, those line up perfect. Okay, had we cut over there already, then I would have had a notch cut right there and that would have been a problem. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to rotate here. And now watch, I'm going to cut all the way straight through so that I have another perfect edge that I can line that template on later. But then what I would do with this, let's get it right back where it goes, is now we're just going to go ahead and take off those corners again, okay? And in that situation, I actually have cut 2 of the bobby templates. So looking at your cutting chart, make sure you're cutting the appropriate amount. Sometimes it's easier to cut an extra one. You may need it. I will tell you, not all of the sewing always goes perfect with this, at least for me. And in the last class I taught live, I messed up my first 3 sewing samples and everybody else did fantastic. So at any rate, that's cutting our bobby. Now we're going to dive in and we're going to cut our fill shape. Okay, oh, and I'm so sorry, folks, I forgot to tell you. I am starting with a 3 1/4 inch strip. 3 1/4 inch for bobby. We're doing 4 1/4 inch strips for the fill shape. And you can see that's going to land on there right here. Now, if you look at your instructions, you'll see that fill, because of the quantity, doesn't really cut from the fold. So you're actually wiser or most efficient, wasting the least amount of fabric if you come over here to your open side where your selvages are. And we're going to go ahead and just lay fill on the flat edge down here. And then I'm going to take my 28mm cutter and I'm going to cut, and I'm hugging the cutter into the template. Now, as I come to the top, I have this tendency to just kind of want to keep running off with the cutter. So at this point, you might even want to shift your mat so you're back into more of a right-handed style cutting format, or a dominant hand, maybe I should say. I know you're not all right-handed, sorry. Most of us creative folks apparently are left-handed anyways. So at any rate, this is what I was showing here. I've gone ahead and cut. I've got 2 of the fill sections already cut out. And then if I'm doing my next one, I can rotate fill again and come on over here. And by cutting them just about like this, you can see that I'm going to maximize the amount of fills I can get in a 4 1/4 inch strip. So I'm hoping that makes sense. Okay, let's move on to cutting Jerry so we can get ready to build this awesome quilt. Okay, now with Jerry, the strip started, and I just was being considerate of my stash. So at any rate, this was an 8 1/2 inch strip. So the whole triangle for the Jerry, in case you're doing math for the layouts, they are 8 1/2, 10 inches wide, if that helps. At any rate, let's do this. What we're gonna first do is, you can see I've lined this up along my last cut from my last Jerry template. Now what I personally like to do is I like to cut the easiest cuts first. Same thing like with our Bobby template though, I'm going to honor this as a straight line. So I might even cut through here frontwards, and I actually like to roll my rotary cutter backwards like this, right? Because it actually allows me a nice and safe, easy way without hitting into the front of the blade. Now as I do this, I can come in here and take off these tips. And this is actually the really reason we're using the 28. I like to start on my part of my body closest to me, but this curve in here gets a little tight. And the beginning of the templates actually have a straight 1/4 inch, which helps us with our seam allowances. So as I come in here first, I want to make sure I'm not hitting my edge of my template with my cutter. And watch, I'm going to actually use this rotary mat to my benefit. As I'm pushing, I'm just allowing that to come right through there. Okay, and just cut. Now I have to point out, we are quilting folks, so there are 1/4 inch seam allowances built in to our templates. So I do need to point out that the real fill is larger, obviously, than what came out of Jerry. So technically this is something for another day. I don't know what it will be used for yet. If you figure it out, let me know. We're matching the larger and the smaller, right? So we have our fill and our Jerry together. I just don't want you to get confused and try to use any of the cutouts from your Jerry template to fill them back in, because they won't. You've got to use fill to fill them back in. So with that said, let me go ahead and take a moment and get this design wall cleared off so that we can start on the first major section of the Super 60 Sampler quilt. This is going to be awesome. Okay folks, as you can now see, we have the beginning of the center star block up on the wall, and I'm going to walk you through the parts and the pieces and actually how to sew a Jerry and a fill together here in just a second. We really only have the 2 styles of sewing, the Bobby pieces and the Jerry and the fill, so I'll show those each one time. But the real rule I need you to understand right here and right now, the only sewing we can all do is the individual units like this, where we're combining our pieces or we're combining 3 of the Bobby pieces. We cannot sew our completed triangles together until we have everything, because once it's all done, we're just going to sew them in rows. It's very simple that way. So please do not get too excited and start sewing together the individual sections. You'll have incredibly difficult seams to put together if you do. We're just going to make our individual triangles, Jerry and fills, or Bobbies, and then we're going to put all of those triangles together in just row after row after row and assemble a very simple quilt together. Okay, so for the center of our star, if you're following in your instructions right here, we're making 2 of each of the sets, or twins basically. So you'll have a black center piece in the middle of all of, and we're using our solid colors. And you can see here they're numbered, but they're not necessarily 1, 2, 3. It's actually 1, 4, 6, 7, 10, and 13. And that's why I'm saying if your colors are just in a rainbow order, they will work even if they're a different shade than what I'm using. So at any rate, what we've done is we have 2 of each of the colors made for this center star, but you don't know how to make it yet. So let me pull this one off the design wall and put it together. Now, if you've never sewn curves before, one of the keys is to go slow. The other key, shorten your stitch length a little bit. So I've put this down to a 2.0 instead of a 2.5. But the other real thing, and I'll just show you right here on the sewing table, is it feels a little awkward. So technically, I'm going to start with this part right here on my feed dogs and under the needle. And as we begin sewing, they're actually going to look like they're completely separate from each other. But I'm going to merge this curve around this side as we go. And that's the other reason why we have this nice little straight line. So start right on your corners, match those up. And we're going to come in here and we're going to use the edge of our foot. So an edge guide could get in the problem or get in the way right now. If you have an edge guide, make sure your needle down is engaged. If you have needle down, that'll help you keep track. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically use both hands together. I'm going to keep a little extra pressure or drag on the back corner of the base piece, the fill piece. Then I'm going to hold this up in the air almost in my hand like this. Maybe you can see better here in this camera close to the needle. But I'm going to actually just bend and manipulate as we go, a few stitches at a time. And I've kind of learned, let's see, my favorite grab is 2 fingers up on top and a thumb underneath for guidance. I hope you can see that okay. Whoops, just pulled it out from underneath the needle, but that'll just take me a second to correct it. Line up those points and let's get this going. Here we go. You can backstitch if you want, but if you don't get it right, you're going to have to take it out and do it again. So you may want to practice a few of these before you start backstitching. You notice I didn't backstitch today. Okay, so now as I'm going, the first thing my eyes are noticing is I don't have any puckers or ripples in my fabric underneath the presser foot. That's a key to success. Okay, if you wanted to try to find a top point and try to put a pin or something in there, I guess you could, but I really prefer to just do these free form curves like this. Okay, now let's stop real quick. I think you can see what looks to be a pucker that was just starting to form underneath the needle right there. At this moment, it's not underneath where I'm about to stitch. It's behind, so I can keep sewing, but that's what I'm talking about. The moment you see puckers, it means you're pulling too much or not enough, depending on what direction it's puckering. Keeping pressure on my lower fabric, bending and curving on the upper fabric, having nice dense solids and or print fabrics with a good thread count also really helps. I love doing this with batiks. Coming around, and it still might not feel like it's going to line up terrific, but just kind of trust. As a matter of fact, you might want to use a stiletto or a seam ripper or something in here at that tip to make sure that they stay honest. Folks, I got pretty dang lucky though. That one worked out really, really nice. You can see that it's within a couple of threads of finishing. If you ever come out and one of the 2 edges is much greater than a 1/4 inch, please just stop and you pull out Jack the Ripper and unstitch and just start over. It may take you 1 or 2 or 3 tries to get really proficient at this, but once you do and you know you've made it, then the next step before you do anything else, just take a moment and snip the curves about every inch or so, not to the threads, but almost, using a nice sharp little embroidery scissors. I got these ones at Stitchin Heaven and I really like them. Okay, so now I've snipped, and then when I go to my iron, I'm going to press from that center piece, the center circle up, and push all of that seam into the triangle shape. Now, earlier I was mentioning that these are 60-degree triangles. So any 60-degree triangle pattern or shape that you've learned in the past, you now can add a circle in the center of it, which I think is super cool, right? So there is our finished Phil and Jerry coming together. you can see here, nice sewing, nice seams, not perfect. The snips helped it lay nice and flat, okay? Make sure you take the time to do this. This will really, really help the efficiency of putting this together, right? And the bulk when it's time to come ahead and machine quilt it. So once you have completed 2 identical ones of the 6 different colors for the center, this is the starting point, okay? So these pieces right now could be set aside because you're not going to sew them together. But the rest of that big center star, as you can see here, forms around. So I like to work off my design wall as much as possible. So the next pieces we're going to need to go ahead and get those bobby pieces made. And let me show you what I've done to get those for you before. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken my pattern, as you can see, and I've built up all of my pieces like I've asked you to do, and then I set them page by page with my pattern. So yes, we're going to go ahead in a moment and sew these 3 bobby shapes together, but you can also see now I've organized them in the exact same colorway as we go around. So really the one we're going to sew together is this S2 for solid 2, the T2 for the textured 2, or P for print. I guess that's how I labeled my other ones. So this first one here on the wall actually fits right up here into this section like this. So let me put out some of these as we go around, and what you're going to notice is you're now using a solid and a print and the white background as you go. Once again, all of these pieces are done by color visually to begin with. These were not done in a systematic grouping or anything. So as we go around this outer part, and this is why we're spending the time doing this right now, there are a few of the same fabrics used. So do follow your structure. You may see some reprinted numbers. That is so that you have a beautiful center star. It is not an error. I've already double checked, right? So another thing I would like to point out is that these white pieces all go to the outer portion as we build here. So let's go ahead and sew this last triangle, or the first set of triangles, together for you so that we can go ahead and finish out this construction or this layout. So as I'm looking at my pattern here, I'm going to go ahead and match my fabrics identically as I see them from the table to the pattern. So if I have my solid on my left-hand side and my texture on my right-hand side as it shows in the pattern, I'm going to go ahead and match those up exactly the same right here. Now for the bobby, it looks like a Y seam, but it's really just an aggressive straight seam if you'll follow my instructions. So we're going to handle these first 2 pieces first, and we're just going to go ahead and lay those over on top of each other. And we're going to stitch now 1/4 inch, and I'm going to go all the way through that bottom corner. Watch this. Okay, here we are coming all the way through that bottom corner. I'm not going to back stitch here. If a couple of stitches fall out, it's actually going to be to our benefit, but I do want to go all the way to the edge. Now, as I come over to the ironing board, it's really important that I'm going to press the seam over to that left-hand side now. I can't always say it's to the dark, and I can't always say it's to the print or the solid, but I can say we're always pressing the seam over onto the left-hand side. Okay, so my seam is over here now, and the reason that is we're going to start up here with our 3rd piece of fabric. In this case, it will be the white. And I'm going to sew just concerned about this first edge first, right here. So I'm actually lining up the new bobby shape to the one on this side over here, coming to the sewing machine, and we're going to do the same 1/4 inch seam allowance, coming down, and I actually now have my finger right on that seam allowance, right where the first two bobby shapes were joined. And I want to go ahead and put my needle right on that seam if I can. If I have to cheat, I'm going to go past the seam. Don't stop early. Go one thread over if you're not sure. And again, you'll also perfect this within one or two of these template shapes. Now my needle is down, my foot automatically comes up. Thank you, sewing machine. And at this moment, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that bobby shape we're inserting. I'm rotating the other ones, and I'm first looking down here to match up the corners. So just an aggressive straight seam. I'm going to take this bulk in here and I'm going to pull it out of the way so that my seam is laying nice and flat again. Right along here. Drop the presser foot and keep on sewing. You might have saw up in that corner I cheated a little bit on the white fabric's 1/4 inch seam allowance. I went a little long, but watch what happens. As I bring this out of the sewing machine, I'm going to press both seams into the new bobby shape that came on. So in this case, I'm pushing them both into the white. Yes, that's bad color management, but this is quilting, and sometimes you just got to do what you just got to do. Okay, so I'm going to push this bulk. And now you can see right here, with very little effort, I have a fairly, notice the word fairly crisp Y-looking seam that joins these three triangles together. And it's super, super easy that way. So this unit here would fit in here, just like that. Now, as you're at the design wall, I can hopefully point out for you, it is going to go solid print, solid print, solid print, solid print, all the way around, even though I mentioned, as you can now see, we have some repetitive colors, and then the white is always on the outer edge, and that's everything we need to know to form our first center star. So get all of these units built up together, and then I strongly recommend you take your page 1, and just like I did, I went around and I stacked them in order by taking them back off the design wall. Now I happen to be working in a counterclockwise direction, but I'm still putting them all in order, right? So if that blue one now, I got a little bit tied up. So here, set those on this page here, and then do the same with your center units as well. Keeping the colors connected, because it'll just make it that much easier when you go back to start sewing these into the rows we're going to need them in. If you have enough room on your design wall, you could have left the star we were just working on up, because the next ring, as you can see, actually goes around the pieces we were just assembling. But back to the original rules, you can't sew any of it together until everything is made into its units. So let me just share with you, we're going to work again kind of counterclockwise in color rainbow order, starting over here with our texture 2. Now in these units, we're going to be adding a white jerry, as you can see here, with all of our pieces. Okay, we're gonna need, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 as I expected. We need 12 of the white jerrys, a different texture for each one, like I said, kind of in the rainbow order as we go around. And the sewing again will be just as simple as can be. I'll go ahead and do it one more time so you can see me put together a jerry and a fill. Once you get all 12 white jerry triangles filled in with the different prints, you can go ahead and just set them again in color order aside so that we can come back and build these. But as we go to the machine, I want to point out one more time, and this is also something nice about working with solids, is I only have to worry about one print. So right sides together, I'm going to line up these little points right here at the tip. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to put pressure over here on my print fabric, and I'm going to just put a little bit of maneuverability by holding on to this white upper fabric with my fingers and thumb. My eyes are watching to make sure I don't get ripples, which generally means that the seam allowance is coming together. The better job I do keeping that foot in line with both fabrics, the more accurate it's going to be and the less ripples and chances of the pieces not lining up. If you ever come around this kind of top area and you can just tell you're drastically off because you found the seam from one piece is not matching with the other, or the fold, the pressed line, I should say, you could stop there. But don't give up too early. A lot of times, even at this point, it doesn't look like it's going to line up perfect. And as you come along, it ends up getting pretty dang close. And a lot of these, as I was saying before, pretty dang close is actually good enough because we have a little bit of bias, or a lot of bias on the edges, and we have a little bit of flexibility we can maneuver and manipulate. Okay, so here's a great example. If I bring this over right here, it looks like I've barely made it. It's probably almost less than a 1/4 inch off. When I press it open though, it's gonna be less than that 1/4. And also this thickness doesn't change. So something right here, and I didn't do this on purpose, I wish I could pretend like I did. Something like this right here would be worthy of considering unstitching and sewing it again. Even if you've even cut the snips into it, you may want to unstitch and sew it again, because if it's that or greater, it's probably going to show up as a problem later. You might miss. This one here, for example, that is not going to be a problem, because when I sew any pieces back together, I'm going to have that 1/4 inch overlap, and I'm going to be able to catch those seam allowances in there. Of course, this is what you're working towards. It could be that way, and you can probably see as I went around the circle, this is the one I started with, and then I got here, and then most of the rest of them end up working out pretty dang nice. Really, the key to this is just using very good quality fabric that's got a nice dense thread count, and things won't be stretching or moving all over. I want you to go ahead and get the white jerry pieces with your printed fill pieces in here. You have 12 of them to do. It doesn't matter if I've got to resew this now or not, because we're going to move on to the next major shape within our Super 60 sampler quilt and keep building out all of our units so we can build out our rows. So that was the rest of our page 3 in the example here. We're going to go ahead and now set these in order aside and move on to our next page. Pretty cool, huh? So page 4 here, as you can see, we're actually going to tackle 3 different units. And as a reminder, this is a sampler quilt project, which means that any one of these units could make its own entire quilt over and over again, as I've actually done with these star style units. So the stars are going to only use the bobby shapes. And there's a couple of things I want to point out while we go ahead and assemble these. Let me put one of these up on the wall so that you can see as we're talking. But before I even do that, as I unstack these 2 stacks, I want to point out all of my lighter prints, all of my darker prints, all of my solids, all of my prints. So the triangles themselves, you're going to need 6 if you're doing the blue, you're doing the orange, right? The blue, the orange. We're going to get into this star down here in a little bit. But right now we're focusing on the 2 and the 3 color stars. I call this the 2 color star because it has the background fabric around it. I call this the 3 color star because it uses 3 different colors. But the point I'm making is they're both constructed technically the same, meaning that all 6 units and all 6 units are matching, even though they're going to go together in different orientation. So check this out. Let's go on over to the design wall here. And for this one, it's pretty dang easy because the black units are going to go on the outside. And thinking about those rows we keep talking about, they're going to be a straight row. So this right here would represent the top of a row. Now it's just going to go from our print to a solid, and a solid to a print. So technically right here, and if you've ever made hexagon quilts, this is the same concept. Right here is the formation of a row, and right here below it will be the formation of a second row. So this is a pointing down triangle. So this one is very simple to construct. Again, you won't put it all together until you have all of your pieces made, but you're going to make 6 identical blocks here. And then you're going to go ahead and put them together so that your black fabric is on the outside. Now for this star, it's a little bit different. For this star here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow my instructions because it really helps. And I'm going to start by thinking the same thing. Here is the top of a row. So I've got my solid here. This represents this piece right here. Okay, so then as I go from there, then I'm going to want to go ahead and have my solid on the outside, and then the solid on the bottom. What I can now tell you, after studying this enough, what happens on the next series are going to be opposite diagonally. So if the solid's on the outside, over here, now the solid is on the outside. If the solid is here on the left, here it will be on the right, so opposites. See how I almost put this one in on the same side? So that needs to be rotated there so that it's opposites. So again, all 6 units are identical, but the way I've assembled the 3-color star and the way I've assembled the 2-color star are different. And you can use those techniques to build your own quilts by having your background here, and you can make a bunch of awesome 2-color stars with different colors, and the background would be the body of the quilt. Something like this would be really fun for more of those kaleidoscopic looks, right? Where everything kind of blends together, but you start to see these star shapes functioning throughout the project. So we have these 2 stars very simply, as you see here, 2-color, 3-color. Now let's talk about this snail trail star, as I've named it, because I don't know what else to call it. Although I kind of thought they looked like ice cream cones. These are pretty fun. Let's go ahead and move these 2-color and 3-color stars out of the way so we can really focus on the parts we need here for our snail trail. Okay, well that way you can see that one a little bit better while we continue to work on the snail trail star, or this 3rd star image you see down here on the bottom of this page 4 of your instructions. So if you're doing this, again, it's going to be a hexagon, so you need 6 pieces, and then matching pieces. So we're technically going for 12 more of the Jerry and Phil units. Working color-wise, we're using a couple of different techniques. Complementary colors is what I was going for, but also I'm matching a solid with a texture in every unit. And I'm matching like the red and green here, red solid, but in the next series, I'm going to do the red print and the green solid. I'm hoping you can see that. And then you're going to make opposites, right? So I'm going to make a green fill and a red fill of each other's. And as a reminder, or if you jumped into the middle of today's video, this shape has to be cut separately from its different template because it's larger than the part that comes out when you cut this away. So you will make all 12 pieces. It's a little interesting in the way we put them together. So let me show you how to get these together in the easiest possible format. It really doesn't matter too much how you rotate them in the quilt, but I'm going to build them just as they're built here in my instructions. And I won't take the time to sew those together. We won't need to do that for this portion. I can just show you. So starting here, following the instructions, I like to start with something that is very common, easy to find. So I have my T, my texture 15, my purple, and my yellow here. So this one points down. From here, what you're going to find is that your Jerry shape will touch the matching fill color. And then they're just going to kind of like orange wedges around in the circle. So, okay, so this is the first kind of combo unit right here. And you can do a lot of things with this shape, especially if you just did your quilt in 2 colors. This does a lot of neat things. This, I was showing the complementary color so you could see all of the units in the block. So now as I come back around, I'm looking for my texture 1 here, which is this, and this is my texture. So solids in the centers, textures here, and again, now I'm just following, so I've got this straight line here. Oops, I grabbed my wrong color though, didn't I, folks? Sorry about that. So I need my solid 7, so that's where this one was supposed to go. So as I was pointing out, the fill unit against the side here, while this is poking out over here, then this green is going to go like this. This red would be around here like this. Coming up here, I have my solid, my blue 10. So that's this one, and then the blue touching on the outside. Once I get into the opposite arena up here, then I'm going to pull that complementary matching color, same situation, and we're going to lay in another purple-yellow combo, but the different purple-yellow combo. Here, here, and here. So let's just review a couple of the design rules for this. We're using complementary colors and the opposite pairing. So texture here, solid here, texture, solid, as you see. And then they're on opposite sides of each other. This first center hexagon uses the textured pieces. That's probably the easiest way to see it. And then they just kind of chase each other like a half orange wedge as they go around. And then the outside pieces are their companion colors. So very simple to form this. Again, you can't sew any of it together until you have all of your rows built, but this will complete the snail trail, not easy to say, star that you'll find on that page 4. And like all of your other parts and pieces, once you've taken the time to organize and confirm you have everything constructed correctly, then just take the time to kind of organize yourself so life isn't so challenging later on your blocks, right? So now we could just put this maybe on top of here, 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 and there. And then like I said, I'm just going to set that with that other page. We're going to go ahead and pull these off the design wall, the 3-color and the 2-color star, and I'm going to set up and show you some amazing stuff that starts to happen with some of the other units you can make out of the Super 60 sampler. One of my favorite units that we can build with the Super 60 set is using just the Bobby template, and it is making the tumbling block units, or for my friends that were gamers back in the 80s, the Quilt quilt, right? So this is one of these quilts that I've seen a million different times, and there's a couple of different strategies or shapes that you utilize to put these together, but the Bobby template works terrific. So the first rule, and I don't know if it's easier to show you on paper or over here, so let's start with the design wall. The same fabrics are going to touch within the shape, but they're made from different triangles. So I just pulled this apart so you can see that this limey print here was the companion to this, but these are the separate triangles here that form that kind of diamond shape. So it gives you this 3-dimensional cube look that you can see looking at it kind of in this direction by shading. So that's one of the other tricks. If you want to make one of these quilts on your very own just using the Bobby template, let's break down the colors. Basically each cube is 3 shades of the same color. So let's take this blue one that you can see. So I've got usually going to be my brightest, my medium, and my darkest. Brightest, medium, darkest in all of my cubes. That gives you the perspective that you're looking for. And then you just kind of have to break it apart and figure out which bobbies to put where. And that's why I want to bring you back to the pattern I've written in case you did purchase it and you're following along. This upper section of the diagram right here was simply to show you how you would do it. Just what I was teaching you, using the same colors, but in opposite triangles so they touch when they come together. What you're seeing on the design wall here is exactly this section right here. If you're one of those people that is dying to start sewing things together, once you get this up on the design wall, you might actually want to do this section as your first design wall build, because as you see these white parts that go around here, these white parts that go around here, those are going to be the fill-ins for that snail's trail star we just did a few moments ago. So you're not seeing the whole quilt, but you're seeing now where the parts and pieces come together in the layout. So these 2 top portions of the entire tumbling blocks are these 2 right here, and then they follow down. Now, folks, I wish there was some systematic way that I could say you're going to need 2 of these and 2 of these and 2 of these, but you really don't. And you can probably even see I've used some of the colors multiple times and other colors aren't used at all like the rest of the quilt. I'm basing this on the actual colors that I think are required in the places that are required, not on a formula or a symmetrical system like I usually would do if I'm building my Legos. So 2 clues, Q*bert and Legos. Maybe those will be in a quiz later. So at any rate, this is included in your pattern. It's the full layout, and you can start to see also here, right in this section is where that blue 2-color star would fill in. So that's why we're leaving these sections, and also why you really must sew these together in rows after rows as you go. Now, the last portions we can talk about on page 5 are 2 more color series or color sets plus 1 little extra one here. And actually this extra one I believe is my corner down over there. So let's say this way, and I've got all the information you need. You're going to build 6 of these blue families and 6 of these green family triangles. Now they're going to play in and out in different locations throughout the quilt. So let me bring you back to the master layout here. These greens and purples here, these greens and purples here, fill in here. There's a couple here, there's a couple over here, and that's why this actual technical section of the pattern, these 2, and all of this would actually drop right into this master unit. So those 2 pieces right there represent these 2 pieces right over here. So you can visually count, the numbers are there so you have the count, you have the 6. What I do want to point out for you, like earlier in the 2 and the 3 color stars, and this is something I often do with my Bobby templates, all of the pieces are in the exact same orientation with the blue purple family, same within the green family, right? Everything is in the same location. And as these go together, basically we're going to have the greens pointing up in a lot of situations like this, and these blue purple ones will be pointing down in the groups like this. So it just makes a really fun kind of a monochromatic color formula that is going on in there. It works good. What you're going to start to see with the rest of these shapes is what I'm going to call the filler units. These are going to be the parts and pieces within the master layout here that are just going to fill in the spots around the quilt that were not formed by the major sampler pieces, such as the tumbling blocks or the snail trail star, the 2-color star, the 3-color star, the circular star in the center here. Everything else from this point is just going to be fill-in. Okay, so let me take a moment though and just organize these, because like I said, this is the best way to really make it fun to assemble when it gets time to get over to that design wall. You've been working hard, and none of these are hard to sew together, but you do have several of them to assemble. Okay, so as these pieces come in together here, the next page and this page here, we can kind of address at the same time. Again, these are going to be more fill-in blocks, and like you can see in this bottom row here, the black fabric fills in all of the outer border shapes. So now what we're moving on to here is the top row. This top row and these fill-in blocks, and they're going to show you exactly how to make them. Those are going to fill in around the 3-color star that'll be over in this section of the quilt, right? And you can see here how these start to fill in. There's a few slight variations in the positioning, so I want to take a moment and point that out. Over here in the blue purple combo, it's telling you exactly where to lay out. So just look at all 4 of these diagram pieces and their numbering systems and build them accordingly. These across the top row are all of the same, but these over here are not necessarily the same as over here. So take the time to orient all of your Bobby pieces to make sure that you have the lights and the darks on the correct side and the black pieces on the correct side, so that when you do put them into your design wall, they will all fill in nice and effectively there. Okay? Same over here, but we've got a couple of more pieces that we're building using whites and blacks. Some of those are going to fill in this bottom corner. And then also on this opposite side over here, we have kind of a fun little hourglass thing going on. Let me show you those pieces, which I happen to have right here on the page laid out, right? So you can see, as I was just starting to say, my whites, blues, and greens are all organized. But these are the shapes over here that as we get into, I played a couple of tricks. So first, 2 of them here, these 2 up here, the upper portions, they are the same. But these lower two, they look similar, but there's one fabric change to kind of keep playing within those colors and the necessity of design throughout there. So just watch these layouts real carefully. They're not all identical. There's a little bit of a mix, and there is a couple that are very similar, or I should say exactly the same. Okay, so that will take you through the end of all of your fill-in pages that you needed, right? All the way on to page 7 as you go. The last thing I want to talk about real quick is the last shapes we needed, and we didn't even talk about them at the beginning of the video for cutting, but it's basically half of a 60-degree triangle. So if you were using an 8.5-inch regular triangle, you would just cut them in half as needed. What you can also do by using your Jerry template, there is again that straight line right down the center. So these were cut by making the Jerry shape, but not cutting out the fill section, and then just using that straight line to cut them in half very simply. Okay, so you're going to have halves, but what I need you to understand, if you're using prints, they're not the same, right? But if you're using solids, see, look, these two solids right now are facing the same direction. However, if that was a print and I did that, you'd be looking at the back of one of them. So there was the original triangle. Just remember that if you're using prints versus solids, you're going to have to be more accurate to your count. On your cutting sheet, which I believe was right back here, it says you need 9 full triangles cut in half. So I do believe if you were using prints, you're just going to have to make sure you spin them correctly, because as you see in the master layout diagram, they don't go back together like a triangle. They actually form up and down like a really long triangle this way to fill in the shapes or the gaps along the sides of the blocks that were created in the Super 60 Sampler quilt. So you're going to have basically 18 of these half triangles, 9 of the full triangles cut in half, and they go into the project like this on both sides to form the outer straight edge of the quilts, right? Like this, and like this, and the outer straight edge of the quilt, and will also be the end caps on each of your rows. So now you've done it. You're there. You made it, right? Clear off the design wall, the table, or if you saw my little video a few weeks ago, the floor, which is where I had the space to work, and lay it out row by row by row. And I do encourage you to start on your bottom row where the tumbling blocks are, because you have the black fabrics to anchor. You also have the touching fabrics to match, so you really can build this tumbling block section quite easily. Utilize that tumbling blocks and these white fabrics here to start to anchor in that snail trail star, and then over on the other side, the 2-color star over here. Once you have them all done, what I actually recommend you do is you just sew an end cap or a half triangle to a triangle. And then I literally just take that triangle back over, match it to the seam, because those seams are going to be opposites, right? Up, down, and I build my row and I set my row back down. Keep in mind, your quilt is going to look quite large on your design area because of all of the different seams that still need to be accounted for. This is one of the reasons why you can't make your rows early, because it'll throw off the design, right? So get everything assembled somewhere where you can see it, even if it's on the guest bedroom, and then utilize these if you want to build them in rows and come over and stack them in. Utilize your master diagram at the end of each row, at least as you press them open, to make sure you have everything in the right orientation. If you find a triangle that's been rotated, just stop there, take it out, put it in correctly. Okay, it's quilting, it's not the end of the world, but do your best to keep row after row as you go through and put your pieces in. Once those rows are created with the half triangles on the end caps, now they're just perfect rows of quilting, you can go through and match up these rows. Now, for the quilter in you, you want to know what happens in that bulky center seam. Now, this is something that I actually struggled with within the machine quilting, and it was like one of the things I wasn't really aware was going to happen on the long arm machine. But it did. These points here can come together with a lot of bulk. So if you're the kind of person that will take the time to snip and fan open those star seams, I think you'll find it's going to be much easier to free motion machine quilt. Or if you're sending it off to a long armer, I think your long armer will really appreciate that. You don't have to do it at every seam, but in the major points where the rows come together, some will be bulkier than others, especially the points in the middle of the stars where we've used a lot of bobbies, right? Not as bulky as in the jerry sections because of what's in those corners. So do your best to omit the bulkiness in the major seam sections so we don't have mountains forming in the middle of our quilts while we're quilting them. I kind of had to avoid it through my machine quilting, and in the long run it doesn't look bad, but I wish I would have known that trick when I first put this one together. And isn't this awesome? We can learn something constantly as we go. So let's look at the quilt again and talk about some of the actual machine quilting now so that you can see the way that I handle the stitching to complement the sampler effect. So for efficiency's sake, I have the original quilted quilt back up on the design wall real quick so we can discuss the final step, which is the free motion machine quilting. Now, in all fairness, this was one of the first quilts that I did quilt on the long arm machine when I first got it. So I was a little nervous about it and I kind of just did some real basic stuff. But one of the neatest things about a sampler quilt is it allows you to practice different style quilting, stitching in different places, because it just kind of lends to that sampler or that feeling of this section is one part of the quilt, this section is another part of the quilt, and tying it all together. So if you look closely here, a lot of these blocks here, I did some real simple kind of just a curved mark or a curved arcing line between. So kind of like that oriental looking arc shape. So I did that in a lot of the areas around. I did some real simple like wishbone filling in to bring together the section down here, which was the tumbling blocks portion of the quilt. Over here in the snail star, I did more of a swirl that was similar in the outer shapes, and then just real basic arcing shapes here within. So basically I tried to use similar stitching within similar areas or similar colors, but different than were in other areas of the quilt, so that it kind of brings your eyes into different sections. It could be done very nicely as Stitch in the Ditch if you wanted to, but you will probably need to accent or fill in some of these bigger spaces here. The fill spaces themselves are great for quilting. So again, this is one of the reasons why I really love to use fabrics like the Art Gallery and the solids here. Something like this really lends to the quilt stitching because it reads almost as a solid from a distance. It's got enough interesting texture and things. So I really hope you love these kits we've put together. As a quick reminder, those are available. All of the products now are on these wonderful landing pages. So I've got a great link in the description below. You can click that. You can get the kit. You can get just the pattern, you can get just the templates. Hopefully you can still sign up for the retreat if there are still spaces, but really been a great opportunity to present to you the Super 60 sampler quilt and the template set. Remember folks, each thing that you learned in here today could be its own amazing quilt as well. I absolutely love to hear your comments, so of course I want to know what you think of the Super 60 sampler template set, but if you'd like to send me an email, rob@stitchinheaven.com, I would love to see photographs of your finished quilts using the templates. There are all kinds of incredible things you'll come up with. I just know it, and I've got a couple of other patterns I'm working on as well. So, like we say, folks, super blessed to have you here today. Keep up the great work in your sewing rooms. Continue to push those creative muscles. They grow, they get stronger, and we will see you next time, folks. Thanks again, and stay well. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.